She sank into the soft, worn couch, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on her chest. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling slightly, as if the world had grown too heavy to bear. Everything felt chaotic: work, family, personal struggles, all colliding at once. She hadn't expected anyone to notice, much less offer a lifeline. The door opened quietly, and he stepped in, calm and unassuming. There was a subtle confidence in his demeanor, not loud or boastful, but gentle, steady, and reassuring. He had noticed her distress from the moment she walked in, and without asking, he had prepared something small but significant. A cup of tea, warm and inviting, placed carefully on the table in front of her. The warm light of the living room fell softly across the space, illuminating pastel walls and cozy furnishings, creating a sense of sanctuary. The cinematic quality of the moment, the way the sun slanted through the window, casting gentle shadows across the room, made everything feel suspended in time. She looked up at him, expecting perhaps a lecture, a solution, or even empty words of consolation. Instead, he offered only presence, a calm, unwavering presence that somehow said, "I'm here. You're not alone." She took the cup hesitantly at first, noticing the care in his gesture. It wasn't just tea. It was a message in liquid form, a symbol of patience, comfort, and understanding. The warmth seeped into her hands, spreading slowly through her, and for a moment, the storm inside her quieted. His eyes met hers with quiet empathy, never prying, never judgmental, just acknowledging her pain without trying to fix it immediately. In that simple act, something shifted. She realized how rare it was to encounter someone who didn't rush, who didn't try to overwhelm her with words or advice, but simply offered steady support. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in months, maybe years. Every small detail, the careful placement of the cup, the way he had drawn a chair closer without demanding space, the softness in his tone when he finally spoke, was an unspoken promise that she could lean on him if she needed to. It was a quiet moment, almost invisible to the outside world, but monumental for her. A simple cup of tea, a gentle hand, and a calm presence were enough to bridge the gap between despair and hope. And in that small, almost ordinary act, she found herself noticing him in a way she hadn't before, not just as a friend or helper, but as someone whose calm had begun to leave a mark on her heart. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of relief, a tiny spark of connection, and an unfamiliar warmth blossomed inside her. She realized she hadn't just been comforted. She had been quietly, irrevocably drawn to the calm that had entered her life like sunlight through a storm. The room seemed to hold its breath as she looked at him. Up close, every detail of his face told a story of quiet strength and gentle wisdom. His eyes, deep and steady, radiated a sense of reassurance that words could never fully capture. There was no pressure, no expectation, only an unspoken message that she was safe, that it was okay to feel, to pause, and to let herself be vulnerable. The soft sunlight streaming through the window painted his features in warm, golden tones. It highlighted the slight lines at the corners of his eyes, evidence of years lived fully and patiently. Yet there was a softness there too, a kindness that made her want to confide in him, to let go of the tension she had been carrying for so long. Even the curve of his smile, subtle and unassuming, seemed designed to calm turbulent hearts. It wasn't forced or performative. It was authentic, a reflection of someone who had learned that true strength often lies in quiet steadiness. She found herself staring, almost mesmerized, noticing how his calm presence seemed to ripple outward, touching the air around them. The tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her chest, began to soften, almost imperceptibly at first, then more noticeably. She realized that this was what she had been missing. Not advice, not solutions, but someone who could hold space for her struggles without judgment. Someone who, simply by being calm, could make the chaos of her thoughts seem manageable. There was an intimacy in the moment, though it was not physical. It was deeper, rooted in emotional connection. She felt the weight of her anxieties lift slightly under the quiet strength of his gaze. His presence was grounding, a tether that reminded her she didn't have to navigate everything alone. In that close-up, in the details of his serene expression, she could see patience, empathy, and an unwavering kindness. It struck her how rare such moments were. People often rush in with solutions, opinions, or platitudes, but he offered none of that. He offered presence. And in the silence between words, she felt something stir, a recognition that she was beginning to rely on his calm, that her heart was slowly responding to the safety he represented. As the sunlight shifted, catching a glint in his eye, she felt a strange mix of gratitude and awareness. Gratitude for the comfort he provided, and awareness that this simple, unassuming man had begun to occupy a space in her heart she hadn't intended to give anyone. The calm she had fallen into was no longer just relief. It was magnetic, pulling her closer, urging her to notice not just his kindness, but the way it made her feel alive, supported, and unexpectedly drawn to him. In that quiet, sunlit moment, she realized she was no longer just a recipient of his calm. She was beginning to care deeply for the person behind it, captivated by the stillness that had slowly transformed her storm into a semblance of peace. The room was quiet except for the occasional sniffle and the soft hum of distant city life through the window. She was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket that did little to shield her from the weight of her emotions. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, and her breaths came in uneven, shaky bursts. Every worry she had been carrying, the pressures of work, personal struggles, and unspoken fears, seemed to converge in this one fragile moment. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone until he arrived. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't try to fix her, didn't offer a string of comforting cliches. Instead, he moved quietly to sit beside her, careful not to break the fragile bubble she had wrapped herself in. The warmth of his presence was immediate, subtle yet undeniable, like a gentle tide washing over the jagged edges of her pain. He reached out, his hand covering hers with steady reassurance. It was not just a touch. It was a silent promise that she didn't have to face this alone. The intimate atmosphere of the room amplified the moment. Soft lighting bathed the space in golden tones, casting a protective glow over the couch and the blanket she clung to. The faint scent of chamomile and old books, combined with the soft hum of a distant heater, made the room feel safe, almost cocoon-like. She could feel her body slowly begin to relax, as though the calm energy radiating from him seeped into her, quieting the storm inside. He didn't rush her. He didn't ask her to explain, justify, or hurry through her tears. Instead, he simply held her hand, fingers intertwined, and allowed the silence to stretch comfortably between them. In that silence, she felt seen in a way that words could never convey. It was an empathy that didn't judge her sadness, didn't trivialize it, and didn't attempt to solve it instantly. He was there, fully present, a steadfast anchor amid the turbulence of her emotions. Gradually, she leaned closer, resting her head on his shoulder. The warmth of his body against hers, the subtle rise and fall of his breathing, and the gentle squeeze of his hand conveyed more comfort than any words could. She felt the raw intensity of her grief begin to soften. Each tear that fell seemed to carry a little less weight, each sigh a little more release. In that quiet, cozy room, enveloped in the warmth of his presence, the chaos outside seemed to fade, leaving only this profound, grounding connection. And then, amidst the vulnerability, she felt a spark, an unexpected awareness that her heart was responding in a new way. It wasn't just gratitude for his support. It was something deeper, a quiet recognition that she was beginning to care, perhaps even to fall for the calm, steady person who had entered her life so gently, yet so profoundly. In that small, intimate moment, she realized that sometimes the most powerful gestures of love are the simplest ones: a hand held, a shoulder offered, and the unspoken promise of unwavering presence. The park was quiet that afternoon, except for the gentle rustle of autumn leaves skittering across the path. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and fallen foliage. She walked beside him, shoulders slightly hunched, lost in thought, feeling the lingering heaviness of her struggles. Every step felt measured, deliberate, as if she were unsure whether she could carry herself through the day. He matched her pace, a few steps ahead, but always within reach, his presence a quiet reassurance. He didn't push her to talk, didn't force her to share her burdens. Instead, he simply walked beside her, subtly guiding her along the winding path. His calm demeanor seemed to radiate outward, brushing against her worries and smoothing them, like the wind gently dispersing the fog of her mind. The park was a mosaic of warm autumn colors, reds, golds, and deep browns painting the world around them. Sunlight filtered through the bare branches, creating patches of soft light that danced along the path. She noticed these details almost subconsciously, realizing that the serenity of the scene, combined with his presence, made the world feel less heavy, less chaotic. Each leaf that fell seemed to mark a small release of the tension she had been carrying. At one point, he reached out subtly, brushing an errant leaf from her shoulder, and she felt a small, comforting warmth radiate through her chest. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was intentional and caring. The simplicity of the moment, the understated attentiveness, made her feel seen in a way that was profoundly moving. She realized that his guidance wasn't about control. It was about support, about quietly helping her navigate a world that felt overwhelming at times. As they continued walking, the silence between them was not empty. It was filled with unspoken understanding. She began to notice how easy it was to breathe when he was near, how the heaviness in her chest seemed lighter with each step. He offered stability without pressure, a calm in which she could exist without pretense or fear. It was in these small, subtle interactions, the way he adjusted his pace to match hers, the gentle tilt of his head when he looked at her, the quiet attentiveness, that she found herself drawn closer to him, emotionally if not yet physically. By the time they reached a small bench near a pond, she realized that the simple act of walking together had transformed her mood. She felt calmer, more centered, as though she had been slowly lifted out of the storm of her thoughts by the steady current of his presence. In that quiet, golden afternoon light, surrounded by the gentle beauty of autumn, she recognized the truth she hadn't admitted before. She was beginning to rely on his calm in ways that went beyond gratitude. Her heart stirred, quietly but unmistakably, a small, steady pull toward the man who had walked beside her, not just through the park, but through the lingering shadows of her life. And in that moment, she understood that sometimes the simplest gestures, walking, listening, guiding, can leave the deepest marks on a soul. Raindrops streaked the window pane, blurring the world outside into a haze of gray and muted colors. She pressed her forehead lightly against the cool glass, watching the droplets race each other to the sill, feeling a quiet ache that mirrored the somber weather. The room behind her was softly lit, a warm glow spilling from a single lamp onto the wooden floor. Yet the warmth inside seemed unable to reach the cold, heavy thoughts that weighed on her mind. She hadn't meant to feel so overwhelmed today, yet the combination of small failures, long hours, and lingering loneliness had brought her here, to this quiet, reflective moment. Her chest felt tight, and the edges of her vision blurred with unshed tears. The world outside seemed distant and unreachable, and she wondered if anyone could understand the depth of her sadness. That's when he appeared behind her, moving with a quiet ease that was almost imperceptible. Without a word, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. A simple gesture, yet charged with reassurance and understanding. The warmth of his touch was grounding, a gentle anchor that reminded her she was not alone in the storm of her emotions. She flinched slightly at first, as if surprised by someone caring so deeply without expecting anything in return. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't offer cliches like everything will be fine or don't cry. He didn't try to distract her from her feelings or fix the problem. Instead, he simply remained there, letting his calm presence speak for him. She could feel the steadiness in his hand, the unspoken patience in his posture, and the quiet empathy in his gaze as he stood just behind her. In that silence, she began to exhale some of the tension she had been carrying, the weight on her shoulders easing ever so slightly. The contrast between the rainy, gray world outside and the warm, intimate interior made the moment feel cinematic. The soft lamp light highlighted the contours of her face, catching the shimmer of tears, while also casting a gentle glow on him. His calm and composed expression illuminated in a way that seemed almost protective. It was as if the world outside, with all its chaos and unpredictability, existed separately, and in this small cocoon of warmth, she could simply be herself, sad, vulnerable, and human. As she leaned back slightly into him, allowing herself to feel the support he offered, a strange, tender awareness blossomed in her chest. She realized that it wasn't just comfort she was feeling. It was admiration, a quiet, growing affection for the calm, unwavering presence he brought into her life. The way he simply stayed there, letting her emotions exist without judgment or interruption, made her heart respond in ways she hadn't expected. For the first time that day, she felt a flicker of peace. The storm outside the window continued, but inside, she felt anchored, soothed by the subtle power of someone who could remain calm in the midst of her turmoil. And as she turned her head slightly to glance at him, she saw a softness in his eyes, a quiet understanding that left her breathless, realizing that she was beginning to fall, quietly, for the person who had become her refuge. She sat by the window, the soft afternoon light spilling over her lap and the pages of the book she held, yet the words seemed to blur together. Her brow was furrowed, lips slightly pressed, as though each line she read reminded her of her own worries and uncertainties. Despite the calm appearance of the room, neutral walls, cozy furniture, and the gentle hum of life outside, the tension inside her felt like a storm trapped in a jar, unable to escape. Across from her, he sat with a quiet serenity that seemed almost unreal in its contrast to her restlessness. He held a warm cup of coffee in his hands, fingers wrapped around it as if drawing comfort from its heat. The steam curled lazily into the soft light, adding a warm haze that seemed to buffer the weight of her anxieties. His posture was relaxed yet attentive, an unspoken invitation for her to notice that she wasn't alone, even when she felt swallowed by her own thoughts. She shifted slightly, trying to focus on the words in her book, but her mind kept drifting back to the complexities of her life, decisions left unresolved, mistakes she replayed in her head, and the gnawing sense of uncertainty about the future. The weight of it all pressed down on her chest, and a small sigh escaped her lips, a mixture of frustration and exhaustion. He didn't comment. He didn't ask what was wrong or try to interrupt her train of thought. Instead, he offered the kind of presence that feels almost magical in its simplicity, steady, grounding, unwavering. The soft afternoon light highlighted the calm in his features, the gentle set of his jaw, the small curve of a smile that seemed to say, "I'm here. Take your time." After a while, she found herself glancing at him, almost involuntarily. His serenity was contagious. The way he sat there, immersed in the quiet ritual of drinking coffee, made the chaos inside her feel less urgent, less overwhelming. She realized that she had been holding herself hostage to her worries, trying to solve everything at once, while he simply reminded her, without a word, that she didn't have to. The room seemed to shrink around them, transforming into a sanctuary where the world outside didn't exist. The soft light, the muted colors, the comforting aroma of coffee, it all became part of a tapestry of calm that wrapped around her. She could feel her heartbeat slow, her shoulders loosen, and her breathing deepen. A quiet gratitude filled her chest, but alongside it, something else began to emerge, a tender awareness of how deeply she had begun to notice him. It wasn't just appreciation for his support. It was a subtle, growing affection for the calm he exuded, a magnetism that made her heart respond in ways she hadn't anticipated. For the first time that afternoon, she felt a sense of balance return. The book in her hands no longer mattered as much. What mattered was the quiet companionship beside her, the gentle reminder that she didn't have to face her worries alone. In that simple, sunlit moment, she realized that sometimes it's not grand gestures but quiet, patient presence that leaves the deepest impression on the heart. The city stretched out before them, a tapestry of twinkling lights and distant sounds that felt simultaneously vast and intimate. From the balcony, the hum of traffic and the occasional laughter drifting from neighboring apartments created a subtle rhythm, but it seemed far away, like a background soundtrack to a world that no longer demanded immediate attention. She sat beside him, wrapped in a light blanket, the cool evening breeze brushing her hair against her cheeks. Her thoughts, usually restless and crowded, began to find space in the calm twilight. He poured 2 cups of tea and handed her one with a soft smile, the steam curling upward like wisps of reassurance. She took it with a quiet nod, feeling the warmth seep into her hands and, surprisingly, into her chest. There was a comfort in this simple act, in the silent acknowledgement that he understood without needing to be told, that he could provide solace without fanfare or obligation. The city lights glimmered below, but the light between them felt warmer, more grounding, a cocoon that held the messy, vulnerable parts of her that she rarely let anyone see. They spoke in gentle tones, each word measured and thoughtful. He asked questions, not probing, not demanding answers, but soft invitations for her to share her thoughts if she wished. And she did, hesitantly at first, revealing fragments of her struggles, small confessions that she had kept hidden. He listened, not with impatience or distraction, but with full presence, nodding occasionally, eyes reflecting understanding. Each response, each subtle gesture, made her feel lighter, as though her words were being carried instead of weighed down. The balcony itself became a stage for quiet revelation. The faint scent of night air mixed with the aroma of tea, creating an atmosphere both intimate and soothing. The city beyond seemed to slow down, its chaos rendered irrelevant in the face of this serene moment. She realized how rare it was to feel this way, safe, heard, and unjudged. The presence of another person, calm and steady, had the power to transform ordinary space into a sanctuary. At one point, their hands brushed, a fleeting contact, but enough to send a flutter through her chest. It was unspoken, yet loaded with meaning. She became acutely aware of how deeply she had begun to care, how much the calmness he exuded had begun to affect her emotions. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was subtle, a gentle pull of the heart towards someone who had become her anchor. They leaned back against the railing, sipping tea in companionable silence. She realized that she had been carrying her burdens alone for so long. Yet here, with him, the weight didn't feel unbearable. His calm didn't erase her troubles, but it reframed them, made them manageable, approachable, even temporary. As the evening deepened and the city lights shimmered like distant stars, she understood something profoundly simple. Sometimes, love and trust grow not in grand gestures, but in quiet evenings, shared warmth, and steady presence. And in that moment, she couldn't help but recognize that her heart had quietly begun to lean toward the man whose calm had become her solace.